I'm so psyched that we picked up exactly where we should. These lightsaber battles were awesome. I loved seeing a yellow blade in live action. I don't know why it made such an impact, but it was cool. I also love the new wrinkle with the Master and that special metal helmet and bracer he had that could interrupt a lightsaber's function. I'm definitely going to need more information on that. It also seemed to make him immune to the stun gun. I feel like the choreographer went out of their way to silence all the complaints of lightsaber stabs that have been part of Star Wars recently, and, rightfully so to some degree. The stabs are brutal in this. I loved it when the Master pulled a second Jedi onto his blade to impale two at once. I know I shouldn't be rooting for the bad guys, but it was cool. The way the whole episode was lit really served the combat. It was dark enough to let the lightsabers shine, but it wasn't so dark that it was all crushed muddy blacks and blurry movements where you couldn't see what was going on or who was who. Yord, ever the textbook Jedi, would of course follow orders to the letter, getting Osha back to the ship, despite what was going on with Sol or later Jeki. The cut to his leg that took him out of combat would have been a little bit more interesting, would have felt like it had a little bit higher stakes if he didn't get over it pretty much immediately. I found it interesting when Osha questioned Yord, and he was completely unaware of the Sith at all. It never even came to his mind. He was more confused by what he was seeing. He had a great line about Kymar getting in your head and staying there. Osha backs this line up by saying that her mother was able to do that. This makes me wonder if Kymar was once an acolyte of the witches, or a surviving witch. Maybe another child the Jedi interfered with and, from his point of view, abandoned. There was a scene in that flashback episode where the girls lament about being the only children there, or Osha does anyway. Two adult witches share a knowing look. At the time, I took this to mean that the kids were starting to notice and ask questions, but maybe they knew about Kymar living close by, another kid in secret. Maybe he was kept apart and a secret for being a male. As Osha and Yord are making their way back to the ship, Osha gets a sense, through the Force, that everyone's going to die. It was Jeki reaching out to her. She convinces Yord to go back, luring the bugs into the fray. It takes some internal struggle on Yord's part, but he finally comes around to doing the right thing instead of the textbook thing. I get that he had to die to serve the plot. The ruthlessness and the suddenness of it made it very impactful. I just wish it didn't happen immediately after he finally started thinking for itself. It's almost saying that sticking to the strict Jedi doctrine was the better choice when the series has so much to say that too much zealotry can take you down the wrong path, even with the best intentions. Sol and Kymar definitely have a past. Yord recognizes Kymar too. If he was at the temple, Sol should have some memory of it, unless Sol was away from the temple at the time. Sol says he isn't a Jedi, and Kymar brazenly throws down the word Sith. It's official, but don't panic, there's still 3 episodes to go. The helmet being worn to prevent a Jedi from reading their minds was also an interesting bit of information. I don't know if this is strictly true or just a theory that Kymar is working with. I will say that Kymar seems very well informed, so his information is probably accurate. When Kymar is somewhat shocked, probably mockingly so, that May had no idea he was her master, he was actually speaking to anyone in the audience who didn't connect those dots by now. He was also able to sneak in some comedy about wearing a mask when Sol asked why'd he risk exposure. He also spoke to the critics when he had told Sol that he had to kill everyone who's seen him. His line about wanting to wield power in his own way called back to Anna Sega's line, "It's about power and the right to wield it." Something like that. Kymar, being a self-proclaimed Sith, heals Osha's wound before taking her in the end, and that's traditionally a light side skill. Maybe I'm starting to read too far into every little detail, but everything and anything could be a clue at this point in the series. Jeki, who I maintain is still the truest Jedi on the show, tries to apprehend May. This was great for her character. She is a Padawan. She does want to do the right thing. It also provided some cool, although brief, action. She stays true to not pulling her blade and she has no intention of killing May. May doesn't seem nearly as skilled as she did in the first episode. Her world is crumbling around her, and she did have to essentially trick Indara into losing that fight. So I was able to look past it. I didn't expect Jeki to be such a fierce fighter. Her dual wielding the 2 green sabers was great. I also love her figuring out that the helmet was a weapon and bashed it off with the butt of her saber. It was savage and allowed Yord to give it a shot as a weapon as well, though that was also pretty brief. Jeki's death was brutal, 3 quick stabs through the abdomen. I know I'm saying great and Jedi death a lot, and the two shouldn't go hand in hand, but I was really impressed by the action. The Master really wasn't happy with May bailing on her part of the agreement. When she's running and his mask appears huge in the screen, you really get a sense of what Yord was talking about with him projecting himself into your mind. In the end, when the two sisters have their heart-to-heart, it was a good confrontation. It was very emotional. It actually started turning me around on May a lot. Each sister got to lay their feelings out on the line. May is still holding moving on to her past and Osha's moved on from it. They discuss their pasts from two very distinct points of view. The truth is going to lie somewhere in the middle. May started off as the villain, but her saying choose me, choose us made her an incredibly sympathetic character. Osha slaps her olive branch away and goes back to trying to arrest her. I am relieved that Osha didn't try to kill her. It was even more tragic because we know that May genuinely loves Osha. Osha's dogmatic sense of duty feels like she's covering something up, or is at least unwilling to face something in her past. When I predicted the two sisters swapping roles, I didn't think it'd be so literal with May giving herself a lightsaber haircut to take Osha's place with the Jedi. When the disguised May talks to Sol about leaving, he seemed a bit confused. It might be because he just got his bell rung in a major fight, but I'm hoping he's suspicious of May. He is a Jedi Master. Basil picking up the flashlight part of Pip also seems to be suspicious of undercover May. He may be the one to expose the trick. I'm hoping it's Sol and that he's just playing along for now. Rewinding a little bit, Sol almost kills Kymar, but Osha's the one to stop him. Sol is the character that intrigues me the most. I don't know if he's someone to be admired or not. Kymar asks Sol what he's done with his darkness. That one line has me thinking maybe the Jedi actually did commit genocide against the Witch Coven. It's feeling like Sol and Osha are working together on a cover-up, but the more likely scenario is that Sol is covering something up hard and Osha is going off bad information. Osha's love for Pip had to be just to get to the moment with the giant bugs. That and an easy toy to sell. I actually had a statement I cut from last week's episode about Pip, theorizing that he was only mentioned in every episode for one specific use. I think we found it. Initially, I thought the scene was a little bit silly that this powerful Sith Lord just couldn't get the flashlight off his back and move on with the fight. But when I rewatched it, he's surprised. He's trying to figure out what's going on, and he didn't really have time to react until the bugs came and took him away. It was barely a setback for him, but it kind of worked. I didn't expect so much death in one short episode. I feel like, yet again, we got a ton of answers and even more questions. I was so pumped up by all the action. We got the Force Kung Fu at the top, but the action has been pretty light in the series since then. This was a much-needed shot of adrenaline. Kymar saying that everyone has to die doesn't just help the overall story of the Sith's return in the prequel era, but reminds me big time of an absolutely incredible Legends book, Darth Maul Shadowhunter. I try not to let anything going on behind the scenes or in interviews or trailers or anything other than watching the actual episode sway my opinion on the show, but I do know that the creator, Leslie Headland, is a big-time Legends fan. It's quite possible the novel was a big inspiration, and if that's the case and that's the ending they're going for, great job. My big theory from last week is still valid, especially since the reveal of the big bad is just past the halfway point of the series. We have a lot more questions that need answering, but the big season finale stinger could be, just when the Jedi think everything's safe, Kymar's defeated, we learn that he was the apprentice and his master is still out there. We did see Anastaea's body lying on the ground, but it's also possible that we cut back to that and she gets up and dusts herself off. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Sith in the comments. Is Kymar the top of the ladder, or is he answering to somebody? Check out this video next for more lore from the wider Star Wars galaxy.